Time for your regular reminder that the Council of Nicea had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with establishing the biblical canon. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and we have multiple contemporary and near-contemporary accounts of what went on at Nicea, and not a single one of them mentions anything having to do with determining the biblical canon. The three things they did were address the Arian controversy, which would actually not be settled for more than a century after that, determine a new way of calculating the date of Easter, and establish a set of canon laws, and that refers to ecclesiastical rules and regulations, not to the biblical canon. And I think Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code, is the main source for the proliferation of this falsehood in the 21st century. And Dan Brown probably got this from traditions from the 19th century that probably originate with Voltaire's proliferation of this theory. But I see three possible origins for this claim in the ancient world. The least likely of the three is Constantine's commissioning of Eusebius of Caesarea to have 50 high-quality copies of the Holy Scriptures produced. This took place in 331 CE, 6 years after the Council of Nicea, and I think some people might misinterpret that, one, to have happened at Nicea, and two, to have had something to do with determining what texts were going to be included in the Scriptures. But the reality is that this was just to provision the church in Constantinople with copies of the Scriptures because they were growing. The next possible origin for this claim is Jerome's preface to his translation of the apocryphal book of Judith for the Vulgate, wherein he says that the Nicene Council is read to have reckoned this book among the Holy Scriptures. And this is problematic for a few different reasons, including the fact that Jerome doesn't seem to agree with the canonicity of Judith elsewhere, but is a staunch defender of Nicea, so that doesn't really make much sense. And we also have a bunch of other contemporaries who rejected the canonicity of Judith, but who were also staunch champions and defenders of Nicea. So it doesn't make much sense that way, and most scholars think that this was actually just an attempt on Jerome's part to rationalize why he would be translating this text for the Vulgate. And the third ancient origin for this tradition, that I think is probably the most likely one, is the Synodicon Vetus, a text that was composed probably around the end of the 9th century CE that includes accounts of the church councils and synods that had taken place all the way up to the year 887 CE. And in the account of the Council of Nicea, in the Synodicon Vetus, they said that they stacked all the books of the Scriptures on a table, and then God miraculously made the books that are considered apocryphal fall to the ground, thus establishing the books that were the inspired word of God. And this is the earliest account of this myth that we see anywhere in any text from the ancient world. So this almost certainly didn't happen, but I think is most likely the origin of that tradition as it was later taken up by Voltaire and in the 19th century, and then by Dan Brown in the Da Vinci Code. But it is not true. The Council of Nicea had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with establishing the biblical canon. For the best academic discussion of the origins of the biblical canon, you cannot do better than Lee Martin MacDonald's 2-volume The Formation of the Biblical Canon. And the fit for this video has been Miles Morales.